Welcome to the book of 1 John, the easiest book in the New Testament to read in Greek, but the hardest book to outline. And we'll find out why before too long. So, what is the book of 1 John all about? Well, you ask anybody, they'll tell you 1 John is about two things. It is about confronting false teachers and giving assurance of salvation. Now, how do these two things go together? Well, I'm glad you asked. But if we're going to answer that question, we're going to have to first reconstruct the situation prompting the writing of this letter. And we don't get too far in that effort, who's the author, before we run into a bit of a snag. You see, 1 John is not like one of the letters of Paul. Man, I miss that guy. Paul will say, "Hey, I'm Paul. What's up, Church of Thessalonica? I hope you're doing well. Here's what I got to say." John doesn't start his letter that way. 1 John has no standard introduction or closing greeting in his letter. However, we do have it on solid church tradition. Papias, Irenaeus, Clement of Alexandria, guys living and writing within 50 to 60 years of the writing of this letter, that 1 John was written by John the Apostle, son of Zebedee, brother of James. Now, we don't know exactly who this letter was written to either. We do know, however, that John moved from Judea to Ephesus after the Jewish War of 66 to 70. And therefore, we can kind of guess that, well, John probably wrote this letter to the churches in that area, in Asia Minor. And we know also that John wrote the book of Revelation. So perhaps this letter was sent to maybe the 7 churches of Revelation 2 and 3. That's an interesting hypothesis. As already stated, this letter was written to that group of churches which was threatened by false teachers. And John, he's just going to call these false teachers antichrists. You know, this guy, he's not called the son of thunder for no reason. Let's learn a little bit more about these false teachers, these antichrists, as John calls them. So the most important verse in the whole book is chapter 2, verse 19. That gives us a clue about what we're talking about here. So these false teachers, these antichrists, they went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, they would have continued with us, but they went out, that it might be plain that they were not all of us. Now, did you catch all that? I mean, only John could repeat himself 3 times and still leave you a little bit confused. Well, John is talking about a church split, a church division. And he is writing his letter to the group of people who stayed in the church, who remained a part of the church. And these guys are a little bit shaken up by the whole church split episode. And the group that left the church, they believed and they taught a dangerous heretical doctrine. And they were kind of bullies about it, to be honest. They were saying that if you want to be a true Christian, you have to believe what we believe and teach others about it too. And hence, the need for John to give this group of Christians who have been honestly spiritually abused assurance of their own salvation. So let's look at the purpose statement of 1 John. It's in chapter 5, verse 13. This is the assurance bit. Let's go down to chapter 5, verse 13. I write these things to you. Here, let me tell you exactly why I'm writing these things. Who believe in the name of the Son of God. I write these things that you may know that you have eternal life. That's the reason I'm writing. I want you to know, to have assurance of your own salvation. And these false teachers, they introduced all kinds of doubts and questions into your mind with their strange teaching. Am I really a Christian? Do I really believe the right things? Well, I'm telling you with apostolic authority that you are right, and they, those who went out from us, are wrong. Now, what did they teach which was so wrong, these false teachers? Well, John's title for them, Antichrist, is quite appropriate because they were anti-Christ, anti-Jesus. Look at this. I'll explain what antichrist means. Let's go to 2 22. Who is the liar but he who denies that Jesus is the Christ? No one who denies the Son. They deny the Son. They deny that Jesus is the Christ. And you know what? At first glance, this kind of appears like it's a Jewish group, doesn't it? You know, the Jews, they denied that Jesus was the Messiah. They were still waiting for the coming of the Messiah, or so they thought. But the thing is, 1 John does not address a Jewish heresy. The letter of 1 John is nothing like Galatians or Hebrews talking about sacrifice and the necessity of circumcision. This is not a Jewish heresy we're addressing, but it is a Greek heresy. Let me show you how we determine that. Let's go to chapter 4, look at another section addressing these false teachers, these antichrists. Chapter 4, verse 2. By this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ came in the flesh is from God. The issue is Jesus the Messiah in the flesh. You see, what these teachers denied was not that Jesus was the Messiah, but that Jesus in the flesh was the Messiah. The book of 2 John, scroll down a little bit, 2 John was written to address the same group of false teachers that were threatening the church. And look here at verse 7. For many deceivers have gone out into the world. Does that sound familiar? They went out from us. Deceivers have gone out, those who do not confess the coming of Jesus Christ in the flesh. You see, these false teachers, they did not deny that the Messiah had come in the person of Jesus. No, what they said is that this Jesus is not who you think he is. You think that he is fully God and fully man. He is not. So they say, so they claim. And therefore they left the church that John is writing to all shaken up, really wondering, do I have my theology right? Well, if the Gospel of John was written to prove that Jesus is God, so the first epistle of John is written to prove that Jesus is man as well. So naturally, this has led to all kinds of speculation as to just what specific heresy John is addressing. Can we identify that heresy historically? It's tempting because we have a whole bunch of writing regarding the Christological debates of the 2nd century. So we want to match the heresy of 1 John with those writings. Gnosticism took off in the 2nd century, and it held that matter is bad, it is evil, and that we are simply spirits imprisoned in a body waiting to be liberated by the acquisition of knowledge. So of course Jesus couldn't inhabit an evil fleshly body. Another group, the Doceticism, or Docetism, excuse me, they got around that whole matter is evil problem by saying that Jesus, he only seemed to inhabit a body. It was just a clever illusion. He wasn't really in a physical form. And then the heresy of Cerinthius, that's kind of interesting. He was a contemporary of John, and he taught that Jesus was just an ordinary man. You know, nothing special about him. He was just an ordinary person, but the divine Christ came on Jesus of Nazareth at his baptism. And then the divine Christ left Jesus before he died on the cross, because of course the divine Christ, pure spirit, can't suffer. So that was the heresy of Cerinthius. Now none of these fit what's going on in 1 John perfectly, but it does seem likely that John was combating an early form of these Greek heresies. And so John is going to open his letter with a reference to the physicality of the divine Son. Look at this. Let's go scroll up to the beginning of our letter. Okay, so Jesus, he was that which, he who was from the beginning, who was with the Father in the beginning, before creation. He is the eternal second person of the Trinity. And this eternal second person of the Trinity, who was with the Father, was made manifest to us, and we have seen him. We heard him with our ears, saw him with our eyes, touched him with our hands. I assure you, he was very much physical, says John, an eyewitness of Jesus. And this Jesus, this God-man, he is the source of eternal life. That message then, John is going to carry all the way to the conclusion here in 5, 6 to 13. And he's going to say that there are three that testify to that message that God gave life in his Son, and that his Son is both fully God and fully man. Let's look at those three that testify. Let's go down to chapter 5. For there are three that testify. And who are the three? The Spirit and the water and the blood. Now, this is kind of curious. So look here at verse 6, where he says that this is he who came by water and blood, Jesus Christ, not by water only. You see, that's not in dispute. Everybody agrees Jesus came by water. I mean, duh, of course he came by water. But by water and the blood. You see, the blood, that was the thing that was in dispute. Now, remember, what did Cerinthius teach? He taught that Jesus came, or the divine Christ came on Jesus at his baptism by water, but then left him before his cross, that is, by blood. So what's John doing here, of course? He is refuting Cerinthius, saying, no, Cerinthius, you and everyone like you are wrong. Jesus, the divine Son and Messiah, was fully God at his birth, at his baptism, and at the cross. Now, in the body of the letter of John, here in 2:3 to 5:5, John is going to seek to instill confidence in his readers that they are children of God, and these heretics are children of the devil. I mean, he's the son of thunder, remember? And he's going to say, and here's why. He's going to give you a whole bunch of reasons. And we're going to see some of those reasons why we should have assurance of our salvation next.